Hello, and welcome to Castle Talk, where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castlebridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology series. Tonight, we're chatting with Nimrod May, Bruno Zarka, and Rob Kutner. That's the creator, the CRO, and the head writer of the YouTube series God Gangs. And this is really interesting. I was really struck by this when the producer came to me because here's how it's described. It's a groundbreaking animated series on YouTube that blends superheroes from the Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and Hindu faiths. And I can't wait to talk about it because you guys have 1.65 million followers on YouTube alone, and you've just wrapped your first season. So congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So okay, so here's the thing. When I think of shows I grew up with, like, and you might not remember this, but like Davy and Goliath, which was an animated series about a boy and his dog, and they got into little adventures and they taught moral lessons, or Superbook, which was an anime series that tried to teach moral lessons from the Bible. So that's what comes to mind when you think of something that is dealing with both animation and faith. But you guys are doing something different because, first of all, this is an interfaith superhero group. Uh, and so, uh, talk to me about like how you pitched that, how you came up with that idea. Nimrod, by the way, happy birthday. So
Thank
go where
you.
you want to go, but knowing that that's the background, that's what people are accustomed to, and it's a very Christian heavy
Mhm.
world. Talk to me about where this interfaith group comes from.
So it all originated back in 2006. I worked for the Disney channels where I live in Israel, and we launched a channel which was called Jetix. It was the legacy of Fox Kids and Fox Entertainment.
Yes.
A giant library with amazing animated series, but also one very successful live action, also known as the Power Rangers. And as a Disney Channel marketeer, I was invited to Disney Executive Summit, where we've met with 120 top Disney Channel executives, and we were asked to perform different tasks in regard to how make Disney great, because we were fighting a yellow sponge and an
Yeah.
American Spanish speaking girl with her booted monkey.
Yes.
And I remember I came on stage in front of the 120 people that were invited, and I told them I have two ideas on how we can attract positive attention towards Disney. And the first idea didn't fly very well. Literally, I offered them to take the first kid into orbit. I was very I was very fascinated by the private space programs that were back in the days before even SpaceX, Virgin
Hmm.
Galactic, and Scale Composites, Burton Rutan. Obviously, that didn't work, and I had this epiphany in my mind, in my head, that came, and that was I offered them to take the Power Rangers and make them the first ever interfaith group of superheroes saving the world together. So basically, the idea came 5 minutes before I stood on stage and offered the Disney executive team to make the first ever interfaith heroes. Um, Much to my surprise, they liked the idea, but it was never fulfilled,
Hmm.
thankfully. And back in the days, I saw how much money they're making on consumer products, and I thought to myself, well, I guess that idea wasn't a coincidence.
Yeah.
I will create the first ever um, group of interfaith superheroes. I grew up in a very pro peace house.
Uh-huh.
I grew up as an atheist, Both my parents were peace promoters. My father was a Holocaust survivor, and my mom got orphaned in a very young age.
Mm,
And even though for them there is no God because they experienced some cruel lives and really challenging sites like the Holocaust,
yeah.
taught me what is seeking peace,
Mm,
and that's how basically the idea originated, from the house I grew up in a child, but also trying to embed it within a superheroes genre. And in 2006, I designed the first version of the God King universe with the existing characters, the good and the bads.
do and any of you can weigh in on this. How can you? I I'm wondering how you deal with the challenge of leaning into this. These are superheroes, each coming from different traditions, faith traditions, and they have powers based on those traditions.
Mhm.
And for instance, in the finale, they draw great power just from concentrated and deliberative breathing. And I, how do you lean into the strengths of these different faiths without falling into stereotypes? Like, oh, I think the Jewish kid would be like this. I think the Christian kid would be like this. Like, how do you, how do you make it, how do you make it work without leaning into those? Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, Rob. Maybe you can share, our
Well,
secret
Yeah,
advisory
Rob, you're the head
society.
writer. How do you how how
well,
how do you avoid
two
that?
things. One of them is it's funny that you mentioned stereotypes because this is a criticism we get sometimes, and I have to say we operate from a position of not having fear. As our
Mm,
last episode should show, and I think we also are careful not to be fearful of that as well, of worrying about what people are going to say about stereotypes.
yeah,
As you know, we're in a world right now where people are hypersensitive to any kind of representation, going a certain way in one direction.
yeah,
And I think to some extent that's healthy because we have, obviously racism and prejudice have a long and terrible history. But on the same time, I think maybe we've gone towards an extreme
mm,
of being oversensitive. And so what I would say is like we sort of embraced what you might call a stereotype or a typicality
yeah,
by giving it a positive cast. So yes, we have Ninju is neurotic and he's analytical, but that's something that has been a strength for Jews, and
yeah,
we make it a superpower. Crisscross is a little bit of a throwback from like kind of like 70s black films and stuff. But
yeah,
honestly, like we've gotten so much love from African Americans and black people everywhere. People love this character, even though if you're sort of a sensitive person at a college or an academic, you might say, "Oh, that's no good." People in the black community say, "Oh, I like that. This is a cool guy who's
yeah.
like the movies my dad used to watch with me, and he's basically good and he gets along with everyone. Like, what's the harm in that?" So we're not afraid of being worried about stereotypes as long as we're not hurtful stereotypes. They're not negative ones.
It's
But
so yeah, sorry.
it's also very, very important to mention. We have an interfaith advisory board.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so basically, we work very closely with two imams, a rabbi, a pastor, a Hindu specialist, and a recently joined Shaolin disciple. I forgot his degree, Rob. I hope he wouldn't chop my head. Um, and
13th generation Shaolin disciple, which
13th
is
wow,
generation.
awesome to say that.
yes,
And they're very involved in many of the creation and creative processes, including verifying the scripts, verifying different designs, and even posters that we post on social media. We make sure that the way that we represent the heroes is in a very positive light, in making sure that we would not be falling into any kind of sensitivities
yeah.
uh, in that sense.
It's so funny how when you can gain trust from the audience or like the people you're hanging out with, though, that you're coming from a place of acceptance or a place of love or a place of inclusion, then there's room to play with all of those, the personalities and the just peculiarities and stuff that it's almost like it becomes a stereotype, a negative stereotype when there's hate underneath it, and it
Mhm.
becomes an expression of love when there's kind of inclusion or love underneath it. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, having said that, as a tall blonde man, I would probably avoid writing. I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't write a black kung fu star of the 70s. I would get somebody else on my team to do that. But it's and what you hear in there is just what Rob was talking about, which is just the fear of dealing with topics in today's environment where there's social media and there's backlash and what have you.
I mean, one of my favorite moments is that the way that the internet has responded to this, because it's interesting. We're sort of aiming in a little bit, the internet kind of YouTube world is a little bit maybe older than some of our demographic,
Yeah,
and as opposed to kids, but the immediate responses we got were like things like "yikes," just yikes, just like they can't handle this, what we said, the stereotypes, but also the sincerity. Like they're allergic to the sincerity of it because it's not the kind of cynicism that the
yeah.
internet is used to. And then as you watch it over time, they all fall in love with it. Like
Mm,
there's like so many YouTube videos we can show you where they start off like hating it because that's the cool thing to do, is to hate things.
yeah,
And by the end of it, like they're laughing and gasping and saying, you know what, I have to admit it was pretty good.
yeah. But and these are superheroes. So it's a team of superheroes like a Justice League or something like that, or like the Avengers. But so which means that not only do you have to design all these characters and make them interfaith and deal with your advisory board and all that stuff, but you've also got to plot a superhero six issue arc essentially. And so that's a whole nother bunch of skills. Like Rob, did you go look at like, first of all, have you written superhero stories before? And was that something you wanted to do or
I have actually my a job I had during God's Gang was I wrote the memoir for Ant-Man, the
oh,
last
nice.
Marvel movie. So
Nice.
I was very deep in the superhero world, but I've been doing this before that, and I think special credit is due here to Ehud Landsberg, who's our director,
Mm,
and he's done things, everything from like Transformers to Paw Patrol to every kind of like action comedy hero thing for kids that you can imagine. And he has an amazing visual sense, and he's really like helped, I think, level up the action quality of all these things, along with our fight choreographers, who Nimrod can talk about as well. So those are I come at it with, it's just sort of a person's love for superhero tales, but like the real skills about bringing those to life are some of the other great people in our team.
I've written a lot of comic books in time, and one of the biggest challenges is always, okay, you have to come up with some bad guy who has a plan, and you have to be able to stretch it across. In other words, you have to come up with a
Yeah.
plot that's big enough that you can have these chapters in it, and then it seems to be going somewhere. But it's a huge challenge, and it's astonishing to me that like things like the existing superheroes, you can just keep doing that forever. Like, but and speaking of which, so Bruno, your expertise is in distribution, and so I see you taking a part in this question. You've just wrapped up your first season, and you guys are selling merch, and you're getting responses. But what's next? I mean, how do you? Is there a vision for where you grow? I mean, are you? Like, I talk to me a little bit about your plans for like where's next? Do we live on YouTube forever or is there something else?
You're muted.
Yeah, I'm not muted anymore. Thank you. So
Mhm.
pleasure, Jason, first of all, to be there. Yeah, so I'm a bit larger than distribution, but let's go there. So what we have built with the team is a real like IP activation plan.
Mm,
And it's true that today, what is magical is that social media offers to content creators a possibility to experiment, to test, and to engage an audience and to create a
mm,
community. And we see that the community today are more and more important when it comes to discuss with the networks,
yeah.
whatever the other one, okay, the one social media driven in a sense. And that's a unique opportunity to build the IP here. So we are in the phase two of the activation, where we finished the first batch of 8 episodes, and we're already starting the production of the next batch, actually, of
Hmm.
four more new episodes. Rob is actually writing the script, and everybody's very excited about the new story to come. And at the same time, we are now in the position to amplify. What is important is the amplification. Before discussing with the real distribution, it's what I call the amplification. So how from your community you're going to amplify your messages to other communities in other YouTubers, YouTube aggregators, or YouTube channels. So for this, we already started. So we are moving with some key partners, and we will reveal them on time. And we have decided to move first on YouTube aggregators that we feel very connected with, either because they have an approach of the kids and the teenagers, which is very similar to us, ethically speaking, or because they already are very engaged in the faith-based programming and very successfully. And we're expanding the same also in what we call today the fast FAST channels, which are those little channels you can get from Roku, Amazon, etc.
Right. Yes.
That's our first activation of the amplification. It will become larger in the coming year. That will allow us to grow the community and the audience. And at the same time, we are also building innovation on each of our platforms. The social media are a very complex algorithm because it's changing every day. So you need to always rethink and adjusting. This is what we do with the marketing team every day. So for example, yesterday, after convincing during weeks, Nimrod, I have to confess, I've been allowed to create the bad gang. So you said, notably, I explained, they cannot be good. They cannot be superheroes without supervillains.
Yes.
They cannot be good without bad. They cannot be love without hate. That's balance of the universe. And we created the bad gang, and those bad gang yesterday, they took over the X account of God's gang. But they did not do it like stupid, idiotically speaking, meaning like they said, everything they tell you is wrong, etc. No, they came with a vision, like what they believe is good. Because even if they are the bad gang, their vision of the world is what they believe is a good vision of the world.
Yes. The villain is the hero of their own story.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very important because thanks to this, we're bringing to Rob some more material for him to create the villains to become more and more, I would say that they can become lovable in a sense that they're so pure villainy that they become interesting to work with.
Yes.
So and of course this morning with the launch of the new episode, the God's Gang won the battle. They took over that channel, and they now coming back to normal. But that was really a real battle, and we saw the audience on X becoming viral, and that's very interesting. So we saw people. So that's what we do every day. That's the activation.
When I was a kid, and then when my daughter was a kid, we were really into like the Marvel Universe handbook, where you have a character and it'd have if you're a comic book reader of a certain age, you'll remember this, where it'd show like ninja, and then you'd have like what they can lift and what their powers are and what their history is. And it just strikes me that you can do so much merchandise, not just in terms of gadgets, but in terms of books and content and reading material.
Get completely, and actually, that's music to my ear because I've started in entertainment and media, but also I spent many years at Panini, the comics book.
Yes.
Panini, the thickest one. So I was nurturing every day with DC Comics and Marvel Comics, etc. So which is a passion for me. Then I also grew up in the animation, the manga. So I think here this is exactly that. It's bringing the story at a level where we're not a feature film, so we're not dealing with live characters. We're dealing with animated characters. So our reference, and Rob reference, and he's a magician with that because the reference are coming from the comics. So what are the superheroes? The superheroes are coming from Strange, from the DC Comics Batman, and in the hands of the right writers, they're becoming accessible.
Yeah.
So suddenly they're becoming accessible. Why? Because they're experiencing the love and the hate. They're experiencing the good and the bad every day. So when you were talking with Nimrod, you talk about the love. Yeah, this is why we are doing that, because they are driven by love, our characters. And that's the strongest force, because every revolution, which what as humanity we've been known, have been driven by love. Actually, all the big changes were changes initiated by the power of love, not by the power of hate. But they came at a moment where the power of hate was very strong.
What strikes me is the place where something really takes off. And Rob, I wonder if this moves into if there are scripts where you can think about this, where something really takes off is when kids not only take in your story, but somehow take in the characters and want to continue that story in their own play, in their own imagination, in be on in the schoolyard saying, "I'm this guy, I'm this girl," and you know, I'm not even sure exactly how to lay the seeds for that, but I'm wondering if it's on your mind when you're writing the stories. Is
Yeah,
I
I mean,
want to
like,
sprinkle in something here that some
no,
kid will
no.
pick up.
Bruno will be the first to tell you about play patterns,
Oh,
and yeah, which is like the magic, energy source of all kids animation. When I want to put forward that's different, they call play patterns. It's like, and I've gotten this in other animation development I've done with like, how do we see these characters like playing, especially action figures and toys, that sort of
mm,
stuff. In this case, we're not selling toys. What we're selling is a play pattern for people to model in their life,
yeah,
for the kids to play like this, like to cooperate, like on the playground, and to actually be these characters, and then grow up like that, and
yeah.
to see the rest of the world as the outlier, and this is the right way to do things.
I haven't even asked you guys to list your the main heroes of the team. So can you do that for me just so that because we went straight into it thinking about it as a team, but I'm looking at the list on the website, but can you rattle them off for me?
Yeah, so we have crisscross, the Christian, Taekwon Hindu, the Hindu, Su Muslim, the Muslim, and Ninju, the Jew.
I love it. Wonderful. And if you go to godsgang.com, you actually have sort of the Marvel handbook style with the character and their fighting style and their special moves. So yeah, that's wonderful. You could turn this into a free comic book day giveaway and and have people pick it up. Um actually, no, you know what? You don't need me doing product management for you. Never mind. So
You're welcome. You're welcome to join the gang.
yeah.
Everyone's welcome. Everyone's welcome to the God's
Well,
gang.
what I was thinking is you could create downloadable content just to print out like a coloring book version of those character sheets because I know
Yeah,
that if I had a Sunday school that was into this, I would be doing that. I would be printing them out and
yeah, but I'm engaging to you to look at something, Jason. Since now as we change this activation, I was explaining to you, which is a bit technical marketing,
Mhm.
maybe boring, but
Not at all.
we change also the covers of the episode in a way the fans, the audience, the community is when you want to watch something, it's because the cover is good. And we're working more and more like a kind of a advertising agency. So meaning that I'm going to take this good example. When you go to buy a burger somewhere, it's because you've been hooked because this burger is beautiful on
Yeah.
an advertising. But it's not going to be like this where you're going to eat it. But you go there because it matched you. So that's the same. We know that the comics fan,
Yeah.
they are a community, a comics reader, and we try to make the cover of the episode like comics cover. And
Yes.
then we will make them collectibles. We will make them even downloadable, and also use them for them to play with. So we're engaging our audience to do what we call in our jargon memes, meaning that they're trying to reproduce something with their own imagination, and that's really where you're building the sense of a very sustainable community.
Wonderful. Okay, so I want to mention in passing that Nimrod, as I said, happy birthday, Rob.
Thank you.
You have a new book out, by the way, called "The Jews 5,000 Years and Counting." Uh, congratulations on the new release, and that's very exciting. I've been talking to Nimrod May, Bruno Zarka, and Rob Kutner of God's Gang, which is I'm just really inspired by your work here, and I'm so happy, and I hope that you continue. I was looking at the comments you're getting on the YouTube thing, and people are calling out the characters and calling out the quotations from it. And I think it's really wonderful, and I hope you continue to grow. It's been very cool, and I hope people check it out. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jason. It's great talking to you.
Have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye bye.